Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So today, the 1st of March 2023, marks 3 years since the Series 12 finale, The Timeless Children, first aired. And given just how controversial that episode was, I thought it'd be interesting to make a video looking back on it, and seeing whether or not the idea of the Timeless Child worked out as well as it could have. And I'll also be pondering what kind of legacy the episode will have now that the Chris Chibnall era of the show has come to an end. So let's get started with a quick recap of Series 12. Series 12 began on New Year's Day 2020 with the first episode of Spyfall. At the end of this episode, Sacha Dhawan was revealed to be a brand new incarnation of the Master in truly spectacular fashion.
Doctor, I did say look for the Spy Master. Or should I say Spy Master.
Then at the end of the next episode, Spyfall Part 2, we discovered that Gallifrey had been destroyed for the umpteenth time. It had been destroyed by the Master after he had inadvertently stumbled upon something whilst hacking into the Matrix. He then teased the Doctor about what he had found out by saying to her,
"Everything that you think you know is a lie."
They lied to us. Founding fathers of Gallifrey.
But the rest of the series mostly didn't touch too much upon all of this, apart from the Fugitive Doctor's surprise reveal towards the end of Fugitive of the Judoon, and some mentions of a person called the Timeless Child, and even a brief flashback featuring that mysterious character in Can You Hear Me? But then we come to the Timeless Children. With the Master returning at the end of the previous episode, he then spends most of the Timeless Children explaining to the Doctor and also us, the audience, what he discovered, which is the revelation that the Timeless Child was in fact the Doctor. And this is where the supposed controversial aspect of this episode comes in. Because you see, this episode basically says that William Hartnell wasn't the first incarnation of the Doctor after all. In fact, the Doctor had already had a still unspecified number of lives before then. The Doctor started life as a Timeless Child and was left abandoned beside a wormhole. Tecteun discovered the child on an alien planet and took her back to Gallifrey. Whilst on Gallifrey, the child was playing with a friend when she fell from a cliff and regenerated, in what would be the very first regeneration to ever take place on the planet. Fascinated by this, Tecteun studied the child for several of the child's regenerations before being able to replicate the process. She tested it on herself before then spreading the power to the rest of the Shobogan race, who in time became the Time Lords. This all essentially made the child, and therefore by extension the Doctor, an important figure in the Time Lords' history. The child would go on to work for a shadowy, covert organisation called the Division and adopt the name Doctor. The Doctor would work for Division for an unspecified amount of time, probably at least lasting for the lifespan of several more incarnations. We don't know how many incarnations the Doctor went through during this time due to their then regeneration cycle being infinite, as opposed to the by then standard of 12 regenerations. The Doctor eventually became disillusioned with working for the Division, however, and so the Division would wipe their memory and revert them back into a baby, kick-starting a more standard regeneration cycle. This baby would go on to become the William Hartnell Doctor, and well, we all know the rest. But getting back to the fan reaction to all of this, why were so many fans upset, or at least unsure, about whether all of this was a good idea? Well, even though the show prides itself on changing every few years, fans don't always like change. After all, just look at what happens every time we transition from one Doctor to another. It will take some time for some fans to come to terms with such a massive change for the show, especially if the Doctor who's leaving was the first one they ever watched and is the one they have come to admire and look up to. And this is even more the case with any changes to the show's overall lore. Fans have for years just come to accept that William Hartnell's Doctor was the first. So when something like The Timeless Children comes along and basically completely contradicts that, it's understandable that it's not going to be to everyone's cup of tea. But Doctor Who's lore has never been as rigid and set in stone as some fans like to think. The show has been constantly changing its central question of Doctor Who ever since it began in 1963. Until the Doctor was revealed to be a Time Lord in the second Doctor's final story, The War Games, the very nature of the Doctor wasn't really known with any certainty. Sometimes the show would gently hint at the Doctor being just a human being like the rest of us, just from another time. Other times it would hint that he was more extraterrestrial in nature. Even after the War Games aired in 1969, it still took the show a few more years to name the Doctor's home planet of Gallifrey. This only finally happened in The Time Warrior. Later, during the Sylvester McCoy era in the late 1980s, the show's then script editor Andrew Cartmel tried to add more mystery to the Doctor's nature. His plan was to subtly imply that the Doctor was in fact the reincarnated form of a founding member of Time Lord Society, called the Other. And the classic or original series of the show would attempt to almost come full circle with the 1996 TV movie. The TV movie would attempt to suggest that the Doctor was in fact half human. And let's not forget the whole Space Jesus aspect of the way the Doctor was written throughout much of the early years of the new or revived series. Think of the whole oncoming storm, bringer of darkness stuff. But despite all of this, the Timeless Child arc still isn't to every fan's liking. And that's fair enough, of course. I'm not going to pretend that it is 100% to my taste either. But enough of what fans think of it was about its impact and relevance to the rest of the Chris Chibnall era. Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I wouldn't say it doesn't have any bearing on the 13th Doctor stories that came after it, but it doesn't have quite as much of an impact on them as it could have done, in my personal opinion. It's definitely mentioned again, especially as the 13th Doctor tries to come to terms with it and tries to find out as much as she can about these forgotten lives of hers. But it's not as if we ever find out that much more about the Timeless Child arc, or at least not that much of substance anyway. We never get any closer to finding out just how many lives the Doctor had during their time working for the division. We never even find out just where exactly Jo Martin's Fugitive Doctor fits into all of this. But I think this just underlines perhaps the real problem with coming up with story arcs like this, at least for something like Doctor Who. If we were to have too much of the Timeless Child story arc revealed to us, then it would undermine why Chris Chibnall probably came up with it in the first place. Just like Andrew Cartmel's plans in the late 80s, aka the Cartmel Master Plan, the Timeless Child seems to have been trying to add more mystery to the Doctor's nature, to essentially put the question of Doctor Who back into Doctor Who. But if too much of the Timeless Child was revealed, then it would have made the whole thing pointless. We'd just be back at square one again, with us seemingly knowing too much about the Doctor's nature. And perhaps this is why Chris Chibnall decided not to go too much more in depth with the Timeless Child. Perhaps this is why he chose to have the 13th Doctor decide not to open the fob watch at the end of The Vanquishers. But what about its lasting legacy now that the Chris Chibnall era has ended? How will we remember the Timeless Child? It's probably still a bit too early to say, given that The Power of the Doctor only aired just over 4 months ago. But what I think is important to remember is that, just like I was saying earlier, there's only so much that Chris Chibnall could ever do with it. Even if Andrew Cartmel had managed to expand a bit further with his plans back in the late 80s, I doubt that he'd really have been able to do that much with it either. Maybe the fact that the Timeless Child didn't feel complete for some fans was by design and intention. I don't blame Chris Chibnall for using his own personal experience of being adopted as inspiration for the Timeless Child. After all, many writers will often go with the stuff they know or can draw personal experience from, and it allows other people who may have gone through the same thing to identify and relate to the 13th Doctor. But what are your thoughts on the Timeless Child story arc as a whole? Were you a fan of it or not? And would you have done it any differently if you'd have been in Chris Chibnall's place? Please let me know in the comments section below. Just please be nice to me and everyone else. Anyway, so thanks for watching, hope you liked it. Please don't forget to press that subscribe button below, as well as press the bell icon at the side of it, so that you'll stay notified of when all my new videos come out. This channel currently has 873 subscribers as of the time of writing and recording this video. But if we can get to 1,000 by the end of this year, then I will do my very own fan-made audio story. Also, please rate and comment below your thoughts on the Timeless Child. And I shall see you all in another video. So, until next time, bye-bye.